another edition of the BFF show. I'm going to adjust my camera here a little bit. Professional. I'm Brendan.
I'm Franco.
And first to start off, we've been gone for a while. We've been gone for quite some time. You can tell this for a variety of reasons. One, Franco has a new background, which we'll get into in a little bit.
Yep.
Second, I'm wearing a tank top, so that means it's summertime. Duh. So that means thanks for the memories. It's summer, but we're back. I'm excited. Franco, you moved recently. Tell me about that.
I did. I moved to Green Bay, Wisconsin to start a new swim program at St. Norbert College.
Let's get into it because we are in the midst of NBA free agency. NBA trading was going on. We had the draft, but now as of this recording, it's free agency time. July 1 just hit. It's July 2nd now. There's been a lot of deals that have been made, but there's been about a few that we felt like we should talk about because they're either really ridiculous, Paul George, Blake Griffin, or really interesting discussions regarding overall cost and overall payment of these star players. I think we'll start there because this particular player is one that's near and dear to your heart, Franco, because it's Steph Curry of your Golden State Warriors who signed the Supermax. That's what I never heard this term before, a Supermax deal.
It's a new term that was coined by the new CBA and the new salary cap.
Okay, and so a huge amount of money, and the interesting thing is that the overall cost and overall value of the Warriors franchise has actually grown. It was $450 million when owner Joe Lacob bought it, and now it's valued at $2.6 billion. And that is for a variety of reasons. One is clearly based on the players, because the players make the team valuable when you win championships, and they won 2 during this time period. So talk to me a little bit about, and the reason why we're bringing it up is that LeBron James said that if the team is worth $2.6 billion, you should give Steph Curry $400 million because of what he brings to the team and not have these cap restrictions that don't allow you to do that, or these extra restrictions that you can't get as an NBA player. So talk to me about your thoughts about the Steph Curry deal and the sort of the state of the NBA free agency and whether or not you should be able to pay more.
I mean, Steph Curry deserved the contract. He's put the Warriors on his back. It's funny. When he first came on the team, he had those ankle injuries. We thought he would never really pan out. And then they traded away some major players and he became the star. So he's really worked out well for us. I think he deserves a contract. LeBron running his mouth like LeBron does. Not a surprise. He can take his services to LA next year and we'll see what happens. But the salary cap's necessary. I think it does create parity. And I know people say super team Warriors, but look what's happening in the league right now. We have Houston becoming a power team. We have Cleveland that's been a nice collection of a team. And then we have different teams kind of matching that and bringing people in. I think it's made the competitive nature of the league go up. And by having a salary cap, you make things happen where the Warriors can't keep an AI, Andre Iguodala. It kind of makes a lot of a chance for teams to kind of buff themselves up. And if we got rid of the salary cap, it would be baseball. And we'd have Yankees, Red Sox, and nobody wants that.
But does it really, and just to be contrarian on this, does it really lead to parity because you have players that can, like a LeBron James, kind of strong arm their team into clearing cap space for them, which is what clearly the Lakers are doing when they sent D'Angelo Russell over to the Nets and Mozgov's terrible contract there, basically allowing them next year if they wanted to offer max deals for 2 players. So you kind of have teams that put themselves in positions to essentially rig the system in a way to get these big name stars over to them. Whereas if you don't have that leverage, if you are maybe the Kings, you don't really have that, or you're not an attractive option because you can't offer potentially those huge deals, or you just don't manage yourself in that way to do so. I know it's not every team. You have the Celtics that were not supposed to make it this as far as they did this year. They were more down the line, and they did that through the draft and without any major acquisitions in the last couple of years. So, but to me, it just feels like, I think if you wanted to you can make super teams. Obviously, LeBron has made a career out of that pretty much. So how exactly does that lead to parity if you're a team willing to just jettison and tank for a while just to get enough cap space to then do what you want with it and kind of manipulate the system?
I mean, the system's in place to be manipulated. And the goal is to have a good executive that can do so. So Jerry West, when he was with the Warriors, in conjunction with that administration, did a really good job working within the cap system to bring people they need to bring in. And I think the minute that goes away, imagine if the Warriors didn't have a cap this year, and instead of grabbing David West and grabbing JaVale McGee, they could have brought in any free agent that wanted a title. How many guys would have signed up for that if there's no salary cap? And Lacob would have not have stopped. If there's no salary cap, he would have brought anybody he needed to bring in to make sure they got a championship. I mean, that's what you're kind of facing. You're facing a situation without a salary cap where a team, even though they have 3 max deals, and that kind of can exist in our salary cap era, they're stopped by the luxury tax, and they're stopped by only having so many exceptions from bringing in a huge all-star cast. So yeah, super teams will happen, and good executives will find a way around the rules. And honestly, players like LeBron James can only thank themselves because they agreed to this CBA and signed that contract. And that's where we're at now. And I think the Warriors are just a good example of how a good executive can work around it.
And speaking of, just to go back to our earlier stat, it was a 5-year, $201 million deal extension that Steph Curry signed. I think the politics and sort of the economics of these teams and these stadiums, it just feels like the owners obviously are making a ton of money, and then they want to cry foul during the CBA and during discussions about salaries that it's not worth it. But I think, particularly for the Warriors' sake, they're working on a brand new stadium, which I think opens in 2 years, if I'm correct, right?
On the Bay.
So they have a lot on the line to make sure that their product is good. And I think it's really hard when we can, this is off topic a little bit, but we can chat about it. And we'll mention one team in particular when it comes to stadium deals. But, stadium deals and these terrible process of trying to get local municipalities to pay into a stadium simply because it's free money and it makes it cheaper overall for the ownership to build something. Whereas when you look at teams and their value, they can certainly do it themselves, and really a team should be doing it themselves. But because what basically happens, teams like the NFL, especially in St. Louis, they use that as leverage against them. Like, oh, you're not meeting my demands, but LA will pay for a ton of money, so I'm going to move the team over there. And again, you're looking at a guy like Kroenke and the Rams franchise. They make a ton of money. They could build, if they wanted to, they could build their own damn stadium without any public funding, but it's a better deal long run for the ownership when you can. So that's where I can't justify that in my head sometimes, when you can't pay a player more because there's a ton of money being made.
I mean, I see what you're saying, but the one thing you're kind of glossing over is that sports, especially professional sports, are a business. Guys like Kroenke own teams, one for arrogance and for the image, but also because they're kind of like money-making factories. And while Kroenke used the excuse of having no support to move the team, he's moving to a better media market. He's moving into a media market that was starved for a professional sports team. It won't be anymore, but it was when he moved. So those are all smart business decisions. And the precedent was set way back when Al Davis moved the Raiders back to Oakland to rely on funding from the city to kind of draw them in. And it's the same process we go through now with like who's going to get the Olympics, who can build what to kind of sell it, and who's going to get the drafts coming up. I mean, it's just the way business is done. And while it doesn't make sense to the average fan, it doesn't necessarily benefit the cities these things are happening in. I mean, it's kind of the way it is. And a sports team brings a lot. It brings traffic. It brings, business to those businesses in the area. It brings notoriety. So those are all really good things. It's just the process of getting a sports team there has kind of been a little hinky, to use a lack of a better word. Actually, I don't know what hinky means. Do you? Is that
I was surprised you used that word. It basically means a little suspect, a little sketchy.
Sure. I don't know where that comes from. So if we offended somebody using the word hinky, I'm sorry.
We'll have to research that prior to this, Aaron. And just
if it happens, I'll just bleep it out like I tried to the last time I used a curse word on the show.
I know. I was gonna say that didn't work though.
Yeah. Well, we'll fix it.
But I think, and speaking of the Olympics, if it comes to LA, I'm going to leave for the 2 weeks it's here, because I don't like crowds. You know this about. I don't like crowds. I struggle enough as is with the people that are already in this city. I can't imagine more and millions more coming. I'm just gonna. I told my wife, I said, that's our vacation time. We're gonna get out of LA, lock up the doors, close up the windows, hope everything goes all right, and then come back later. But let's jump around to Paul George. Paul George, big news, traded from the Pacers over to Oklahoma City, which kind of most people were shocked for a variety of reasons. One, Oklahoma City wasn't really on the media radar. It was the Celtics, it was Cleveland, it was maybe the Lakers trying to make a play, and then all of a sudden OKC comes in, gets him, but they get him for, and I'm going to butcher the last names. Do you know how to pronounce the last names, Franco?
Victor Oladipo is the one you're probably going to struggle with.
and Sabonis.
Sabonis. Yep. You did all right. Good job.
I don't think, yay, casual NBA fan, Brendan. And no picks, no picks whatsoever that they got out of this deal. Paul George, obviously all-star player, but supposedly the Celtics were offering 3 draft picks based on reports and 2 starters between Bradley, Crowder, and Smart. They were not offering their Nets pick or the Lakers-Kings trade pick. The combo of the current picks could potentially have been in the 20s, whereas the Pacers were looking for a top 10 pick.
Yep.
The big part of this thing is it's a short-term rental, if you will, because there is a last media report I read, a 75% chance Paul George bolts for the Lakers. He's gone so far as saying, I want to play for the Lakers. He goes to Disneyland. Now he wants to go and play for the Lakers. He's there a lot. He's made it very clear. He made it clear to the Pacers he's going to go to the Lakers. So with that in mind, OKC takes a flyer, but what do the Pacers get out of this, Franco? I can't, and am I missing? I might be missing something, but I don't. Out of all the bigger deals that we've seen in the past, you usually get some sort of value of a draft pick, at least, for this type of player, for this caliber of a player. What happened, in your opinion, with this trade? Why did it happen?
So the Pacers were kind of a rock and a hard place. They were pushing for draft picks during the draft. They were not going to move for less. And then as soon as the draft was over, it kind of the market dried up. And the reality is they're going to lose Paul George anyway. And I think OKC played it really well by waiting and then getting the best offer after the fact, because the Celtics pulled their offer and it kind of left OKC the only one standing. And it's an interesting trade. I actually like Oladipo a lot. I think Oladipo, and mind you, both Sabonis and Oladipo are very young players. So it's not a bad investment for the Pacers. It just would have looked better if they would have gotten some picks to couple with them. But you're getting 2 fringe starters to replace a guy who's going to leave for LA anyway. So it's not a bad pickup because you could lose them for nothing next year. As far as OKC, this is a huge gamble. I mean, they want to keep Russell Westbrook. He has an opt-out after the first year. So bringing Paul George in, who's another Southern California guy, to join Westbrook at OKC is kind of a move to say, we're invested in the future of the team, we want to keep you. And they're kind of hoping that they have a year to use that new facility with the state-of-the-art staff and everything else to keep Paul George and convince him it's time to stay here and kind of replace Kevin Durant. Do I think it's going to work? Probably not. We've seen it work before in other instances, especially in baseball. You see it all the time where, I mean, you get these run of players that come in for the playoff run and they come so enamored with winning, they end up staying behind. Giants are a good example. A lot of players that joined them in that very first run ended up signing long-term contracts after that run. So I think it's a smart move by OKC. It might backfire. It may be back to plan 0. But if it works, it's going to be brilliant because they'll have Westbrook and George both signed. The problem is that Westbrook's a UCLA guy, and he might want to go back to LA. And we know George wants to go to LA. So you might have just made a tag team that's going to leave you soon. But all in all, I think the Pacers did the best they could. I think they probably should have pulled the trigger during the draft. But I like the package of Sabonis and Oladipo better than I like the Celtics package, to be honest with you. So they went in that way, and they're not losing them immediately. They both signed long contracts. OKC gets a player, and I'm pretty sure that this year's contract, George actually makes $3 million less than Oladipo, so they're getting a discount. So worst comes to worst, they have a year of contention, and they blow it all up, or they sign 2 stars that they keep for a long time.
Speaking of the Celtics, is the picture that's being painted right now of Danny Ainge, is it justifiable, or is it wrong? Because he has seemed to be, at the Celtics, have been attached to Jimmy Butler, they've been attached to Paul George, they've even, I think, last one report I read was they were attached to Carmelo Anthony at one point, if he were to waive his no trade clause. They've been attached to almost every free agent, and they're still targeting the Jazz's Hayward right now, trying to get him potentially to come over. Is Danny Ainge, is he just too hesitant? Are we not seeing the picture? Is it like one of those, what were those things that we had when we were kids, Franco, that was if you stared at it long enough, you
Magic Eye posters.
Yes. Are we just not seeing what Danny Ainge is seeing by looking at it weirdly, and he's seeing something that we're not, or has he just been too hesitant?
I think it's maybe a mix of both, but I'm going to skew more towards we're not seeing the full picture. It's really easy for us to sit here and say, well, should have pulled that trigger, should have that trigger. But Ainge has a vision, and it's kind of worked out for him. And he has a coach that has made something out of nothing. I mean, he's done this back when he was a Butler. And that's what makes this Gordon Hayward thing really interesting, because he took Gordon Hayward from being an under-recruited athlete to being a star and missing the last shot in a championship game to win the game against Duke. So if that was Ainge is seeing, he's seeing players that other people don't see. And if he sees Hayward as a star that trumps Paul George, which isn't realistic, but in that system he might be more of a star, then he has the secret. And the reality is that other East teams have been trying to catch up with the Cavaliers for 4 years. It took Ainge a 2-year rebuild to get there and take a game from the Cavs and look good in doing it. I think he has the formula. We're just not seeing the full picture.
Let's go back to my neck of the woods and
your new favorite team, right? You're a fan of this team. This is your new. You adopted this team as your team. Say it out loud.
Again, I adopted them because they gave out free stuff, which I still have. There we go. Never forget.
Yeah, for free. You better choose better words. That segs interestingly. Never forget. All right, go ahead.
So, the Clippers, against all odds, they went ahead and signed Blake Griffin to a 5-year, $173 million deal. Blake Griffin, when you do a quick Google search of Blake Griffin plus injuries, you bring up quite a lot of pages, quite a lot of hits. There's been over 7 or so injuries, half of them season-ending, all of them just debilitating.
Yeah.
And the funniest part of this to me is, and again, sure, I'll go see the Clippers because I think tickets are going to be cheap. So I'm really excited about that. They made a T-shirt, and I don't know if you saw the T-shirt. Did you see it?
I saw it. It was special. But describe it for our viewers, please.
So basically, they made a T-shirt, and it said like Trailblazer on the bottom.
Yep.
And it had Blake Griffin in the back, and if we were to just put a period and just say it was Blake Griffin, LA Trailblazer, we'd be fine with it. We wouldn't even bring it up.
Walk away. Yeah.
Walk away. But this picture and this T-shirt had pictures of people of Martin Luther King, JFK, Einstein. Who else am I missing? Gandhi, I think, was on here.
I think Gandhi. Yeah, it was like the row of people that have done really spectacular things in the world.
Yeah.
And given the franchise in LA and given our current political climate,
yep,
really just shooting in the dark and hitting a target they didn't want to hit. I almost compare it to those tweets you see when companies go out and like they see a hashtag's trending, and they kind of like hook onto the hashtag and tweet something afterwards. Not my favorite one. The most depressing one probably was after Ray Rice's wife decided to stay with him, and a bunch of women also in support of her did this whole "Why I Stayed" hashtag. And it's, for Ray Rice's wife, is he reforming and he's being a better person? It's an isolated incident. Meaningful stuff and people supported her. DiGiorno Pizza put out, hashtag why I stayed, I have pizza at home. This is that kind of moment. Like, you're taking something that's totally unrelated and is really offensive and putting it on a T-shirt. And on top of that, Blake Griffin isn't that good. He didn't blaze any trails. If they kept CP3... maybe you use Trailblazer. I still wouldn't use Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr., but just tone deaf. And that's really that organization. We had that whole racism issue 3 years ago. They're struggling. They need to do something. And Griffin's not the answer. And the problem with Griffin is, like you said, injuries. We loved him when he was at Oklahoma and he was diving over the bench and playing this hard style. We saw this Dwayne Wade too. That style takes you down. And after a while, you're not going to be able to play at that level. And they basically they bought a horse that's on 3 hooves. It's going to end up crashing some point, and they just paid a lot of money to do that.
That, I think, is the T-shirt egregious. Terrible decision.
Yeah.
Would I buy it and send it to you? Yeah, I would. And actually, there's a site that came up, and actually, you can buy the shirt if you want. So Google it.
Oh, wow.
You can actually buy it.
Yeah, we'll do on live show. I will burn that shirt on live show. So if you send it, we'll have a made-for-TV moment. I'm not sure where I'll burn it. Maybe I'll have to record it and then splice it in, but I will burn that on our live show. It'll happen. Like
a Blaze WWE Women's Championship on WCW moment?
Yeah. Then I'll throw it in the trash can.
Live on TV?
Yeah, I'll do it. Well, not live, because obviously we record this and edit it. because I can't control my mouth sometimes. But I mean, live for our show, it'll happen on the show. I will burn it. That's my promise, dear viewers.
That's the promise.
We will burn that shirt.
I will try to do it. I will try to do it. But that is just ridiculous in of itself. But then you look at, okay, T-shirt aside, let's look at the deal. I can't justify that deal because he's not somebody that, he's not necessarily the future. And the future would be, if they were really all in on Jerry West style, we need to rebuild to get better in the long run, then you would not have seen this deal be made, because then you could have allowed that money to go to a more
a youth movement,
free agent.
Yeah,
a better
a youth movement. Better, like, even if you kind of mortgaged this year, you'd have a chance to rebuild the next 2 years. I mean, the 76ers model, not as nuclear as that, but you have that chance.
You have that chance, and the I alluded to this in the beginning, but this is also part of a grand scheme to try and move over to Inglewood, which, again, from the LA perspective of just when you look at this city, there's already now 2 NFL teams, there are 2 NBA teams, there are 2 MLB teams, there's a hockey team, there's a soccer team. There's a lot going on.
Whoa, time out. Because the Angels are called the Los Angeles Angels, they're still in Anaheim.
I'm thinking within reason.
All right, within
geographically.
All right, I'll give you that.
Geographically, you can jump down to Anaheim from LA if you're really desperate. You could go down to San Diego if you want to include that. So that's 3. Why? And actually, I didn't mention this earlier when we were getting ready, but I don't know if you saw Bill Simmons' column on The Ringer.
I did.
He wrote a fake letter to Steve Ballmer about what he could do to change the direction. And the last one was interesting. The last one was, don't take the team and move it to Inglewood. Take the team and move it to Seattle.
That's a really interesting point, actually. Yeah.
And I thought I was going to ask you, what do you think about that? Because when I read that, I was like, that's a really great idea, because it makes sense for Ballmer. Ballmer grew up in Seattle. That's where he made all his money with Microsoft.
Yep.
This seems like a perfect fit, and he has the leverage with the NBA as a multi-billionaire to do it.
I mean, I agree with you, and I think it is a perfect fit. And it'd be such a cool thing to do, given that Seattle's been hungry for a team since they kind of had a team stolen from them. And that's a really fascinating situation, actually, if you look at how it turned out. Have you ever looked at the ripple effect on that? So, to educate our viewers, who some may be young, I sincerely doubt it, but so OKC is a team for one reason, or a couple reasons. But the first one was we had this huge disaster called Hurricane Katrina that wiped out the New Orleans Stadium. So New Orleans Hornets went up to play at OKC, and that was a really successful run, and it banked a lot for that city. And so the city invested on building a new stadium and then luring a team there. And so that's how they got the Sonics, who were struggling financially because promotion wasn't going the right way. And they didn't have a bankable star. Little did they know they drafted Kevin Durant, who would become a bankable star, but he never had a chance to really play in Seattle. So you have this weird effect, had Katrina not happened, or basically we've been more prepared with levees and such, you never would have a team in OKC. We'd still have the Supersonics. We never have the Clippers moving to Seattle. It's a weird way things happen. But to your point, I think it'd be awesome if it happened. I don't think it's going to happen. There's just too much money in LA right now. I think Ballmer's kind of tied into the city. But, I mean, let's cross our fingers, wish on a star, do all those things, but I doubt it.
I just thought it would be really cool because it makes sense. I mean, it is, again, it's still weird that there isn't a team there, that of all the teams to pull, they pulled that one. I mean, there's just a lot of wrong about this that could be righted with this move for sure.
Yeah.
So I think the last thing before we wrap up, is there any deals that you see, or anything that you would like to see happen that hasn't happened yet? I know I've got one, but maybe you've got something that you're like, hey, I've heard this might happen. It'd be great if it did, or I haven't heard anything yet, but they should do it.
I mean, I've heard that Teague might go to the 76ers, and that would be fascinating. Because you'd have Fultz, Teague, Embiid. That's a lineup that could do a lot of damage. So I'd like to see that happen, just because that'd be a fascinating go. But what's your deal?
Carmelo Anthony set free. Because I think that was the best part for me last week, was listening to WFAN out of New York during Phil Jackson's the run up to Phil Jackson leaving, and then after Phil Jackson being essentially fired and now being paid $25 million to go hang out in Montana and then go hang out on the West Coast.
I mean, it's basically. I mean, by the way, happy Bobby Bonilla Day yesterday.
Oh yeah, happy Bobby Bonilla Day.
Yeah, it's a situation where a guy signed a contract, and good for him for making that deal. Where no matter what happened, he's going to keep getting paid.
Yeah.
Bonilla will be paid till 2035. Phil Jackson has 3 more years or 2 more years.
He's got 2 more years. It was a $12 million per year deal.
So he'll make 2 more years of bank before he eventually goes back to LA. I mean, that's what's going to end up happening. So he'll probably go sit in Montana.
Ends up being an advisor?
I think he sits in Montana for 2 years and comes back to LA.
That'd be amazing.
And I mean, Phil is antiquated, and that's kind of a sad point. But it's like when we saw Pat Riley come back to try to work with the Heat. It worked for 1 year, then it crumbled. Same with Phil Jackson. Like, you have coaches that aren't used to the new way to play NBA, and they're trying to force an old system, the triangle, which doesn't work with the personnel. Carmelo Anthony's not a triangle player, sorry. And that's why it failed. And I think near the end there, Phil was just showing up to work so he could collect the check. And when he did show up to work, which is not very often. So, good on New York for getting rid of him. And Carmelo Anthony, I don't know what to say. I think we'll eventually see in the next 3 years a team that has Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, and then throw in another one of the Rat Pack from that group, that 4 group of friends that want to go somewhere. Maybe we'll end up in LA, we'll see. But we'll see it. It might end up being like, remember that LA team with Shaq, Kobe, Karl Malone, like Gary Payton? That team. We'll see that happen again.
I just enjoy the stories that Phil Jackson fell asleep watching drafts. During draft workouts, he fell asleep. He openly was dismissive of his star player in Carmelo Anthony and destroyed his trade value, and then also completely tried to throw his only bright spot, Porzingis, under the bus for just missing a meeting, which is such an old school power move on his part that doesn't make any sense. So it's so funny. It's very Nixonian.
It is,
and I think it's our friend Travis Claus is still recovering. We thought for sure. Quick side note before we have to leave, that Porzingis was gone because he had just bought a Porzingis jersey and it arrived the day of the trade deadline.
Yep. Usually that's the kiss of death. But I feel like, I mean, had Jackson had another year, Porzingis would be gone. But that was just Jackson being Phil Jackson, realizing this is how I get fired. Let me go through with it. But there's no way Porzingis was going to move. Nobody had enough capital to move him. So I guess when the show is saying, bye, Phil. Enjoy Montana. Rope a cow or something for me. Name it Carmelo.
Bring Carmelo. All right, man. Well, we got to wrap up the show. Excellent show as always.
Yep.
Normally we reserve time for final thoughts. I don't think we have enough time for that.
No, we only have like a minute, so we got to wrap.
We only have a minute, so I think my final thought will just stand. Good job, Phil. Enjoy Montana. $24 million for not doing anything. Not a bad deal. Maybe this was the Zen Masters move all along.
I mean, I agree. My final thought is, good job by Bonilla. Hope you're enjoying retirement. And then, come on, Andre Iguodala, sign back with the Warriors. Don't go to Houston. It's ridiculous. All right, I think we're out. Say our goodbyes here.
We're out. For BFF, I'm Brendan.
I'm Franco.